Rose, our Middle East correspondent in Tel Aviv. And Emily, we know what the IDF is saying about the goal and the numbers of this operation. What are you hearing from your sources on the ground?
Well, Ayman, the images that you're about to see on the screen, the footage was actually shared with me by the White Helmets. That's the Syrian Civil Defense. They're a search and rescue group that are trying to help these trapped civilians in the embattled region. And they've told me that it's been very difficult to reach these civilians. There are a lot of civilians that still remain in dire circumstances due to the fact that these airstrikes that are pummeling the area are too frequent for them to actually reach a lot of these refugees. They also said and reported that these were Shiite militias that were taking part in this assault, as well as Russian fighter jets. And they've reported essentially very dire circumstances. One recent attempt to stop the violence was that about midnight there were reports of perhaps a Russian brokered ceasefire that was going to continue if the two sides reached some kind of agreement. That is, if the pro-Assad government and forces reached an agreement with the rebels on the ground. Of course, we know now that that did not come to fruition, and in fact, the fighting did continue and the assault did continue just a few hours ago.
And Emily, if you could broaden the picture for us, we know, for example, that Jordan, as we mentioned, is not taking in any more of these Syrian refugees.
Yes, as we know, that area borders exactly Jordan and Israel, and it really fits into the larger policy, what has been deemed Assad's scorched earth policy, where he encapsulates and encases a rebel-dominated pocket, continues forward. It thus cuts them off of supplies. It also cuts civilians off of humanitarian aid, and then these rebels are forced to, and these refugees also are forced to leave through, let's just call them corridors, that actually push them, in this case, southward, because they have nowhere else to go. So it's the natural migration of them to go southward towards both the Israel and Jordanian border. The Jordanian border and Jordan has been influxed by these Syrian refugees over the course of this civil war. It has been cited as one of the catalysts for Jordan being on the verge of economic collapse that sparked protests, as we know, earlier this month. And it has said no to any more refugees entering its border, as the country does remain on the verge of economic collapse and thus doesn't want to further make the situation even more dire.